Amphion is going to be our first map for this best of 3 semifinal. In the top position, it is Team Liquid's Clem. Oh, I guess his Lem is only on Europe. Okay. And on the bottom side, we do have Gen G's Trap. I'm guessing he's still on Gen G. There were a decent amount of pickups prior to EWC, as we all know. And then some people have already been let go from the teams that they were picked up for EWC. But maybe not everyone. Maybe there is some intention to wait for the next EWC Club Championship announcement before, like, letting go or picking up more people. I don't know. Anyway, be cool if he is still on that team. So Trap played a wonderful PvT versus Spirit. I mean, really looked sharp. Just sharp, clean, in control. Everything good about Protoss. So I was really impressed. He seems to be back up, getting closer and closer to his old form. But then there's Clem, who, no doubts of his capabilities throughout most of his career, really. Like, if you had him pair up against a Korean Terran 3 or 4 years ago, you knew that wouldn't be a good time. So it's not like he's always been amazing and, well, perfect and everything. But he's always, had a certain expectation that he continues to meet. And right now, the expectation that he is still meeting is that he's the best in the world. Really winning the global championships, then dominating whatever tournament he did participate in. After that, took a little break from the Open Cup last week and is back here today. So our expectations are rather high for Clem. Higher than Trap's, I would say. And we also know, specifically for this matchup, that Clem also is just really good at this matchup. So it's like, there's no matchup he's bad at nowadays, to be fair. But I think what I'm most looking forward to is not the overall results here, but really a lot about the early to early mid-game micro battles. I feel like both of them had their highlights there versus their respective opponents. So Clem just dismantled Geralt under 7 minutes, but then Trap also did a similar thing versus Spirit in game 1 with DTs, mind you, and those things are tricky and can cause anyone problems, but still. And then he had some really good micro to display in the second game even, so that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I'm going to guess Clem's micro is still better. Not because Trap's is bad, but it's just one of his highlights. And we're going to find out very soon. Clem to go for a factory expands. So he is going to grab that starport, get a medevac, fly right across. It is Amphion as well, so like big shocker. But there's a Stargate. So Clem, no doubt, going to be wary of that. Technically hasn't gotten that scout on it, but that would be something you'd be aware of as Protoss in general, against Protoss, as well as on a map that is traversable by air very easily. So, in fact, I would actually imagine a Viking. He's going to go for a medevac. He could go Viking. And he could go for multiple Vikings, multiple Cyclones, and then race across the map and try and actually take on the Phoenix and whatever depth span should be warped in. Or he could try and get a drop going before the Phoenix find his drop. And then that would also keep the Phoenix pinned back at home. So you could have basically a stalemate of one person not really going to dive in with their medevac, but the other person wary of that potential just keeps their Phoenix at home. So there, I mean, it's kind of, you might think like, oh my god, this is going to run into a Phoenix. But when there's only one, barely 2 Phoenix out, when they might not be in the correct position, which in this case they 100% are, then it could kind of work. But in this case, Trap with that first Phoenix just plants it in the middle to check exactly for this. I mean, he could have gone a little bit farther. He could have actually dipped in and saw that there was a 1-1-1, right? But not really needed. So now he's going to track this. Clem just says, oh well, and then pairs up with the army that had raced across the map the normal ground way. A Trap is already very well prepared against this. He does have 3 Adepts, 3 Phoenix, a shield battery, most importantly. And the pylon, while it looks tempting to go ahead and try and target, it just would not ever be worth it. You wouldn't kill it fast enough, not before Trap recharges the pylon with the shield battery. So no damage done in the early game. Yet, it looks like Clem still just full steam ahead on his aggressive opener. As I was saying, I think a lot of other Terrans, they might either try and form their opener in a way that more directly deals with Phoenix, whether it's offensive or defensive, or they might just kind of, give up on being aggressive entirely and say like, you can have it, but I'm going to, macro better or something. One Phoenix did just go down there. Meanwhile, only a couple of Marines. Widowmine did go down, but the Medevac, Cyclone, Liberator, all the really expensive things still alive. Medevac still alive! Jeez Louise! It is still alive! Oh, and the Phoenix died for nothing! Oh no! Trap trying to find that little edge as he moves out on the field, thinking I could probably get the advantage here. You know, if he's rallying, he's not going to have all his units actually ready to attack, and then I'll kind of get like a snowball effect, because that's what I do against so many other Terrans who try the same stuff against me. I catch them off guard by being a little more forward, actually chasing after them. They go, oh shit, they run back home, they mess up their micro, whatever it is. And Clem did not do any of that. Trap definitely making a mistake by chasing after a young Frenchman. Still in some trouble, honestly. Vikings and Liberator taking care of yet another Phoenix, with the Cyclone barely helping out. The Phoenix count already taken down 2-3, having lost 3. Like, that's already devastating for a Protoss, guys. And while Clem, you do have to note, is still making basic units. He's not grabbing stim, he's not grabbing combat shields, he's not grabbing all his production. These are very strong basic units. They're in a good position, but Trap still more prepared than a lot of other Protosses. In fact, very prepared, completely dismantles this push. And that is more so what Trap was looking for, and a punish as Clem tries to escape. The shield battery at the front already. The Immortals actually in position. Really the big things there. Any other way, no shield battery, army up here, and then having to walk down into the Liberator, and that would have been very difficult to hold against. Both players playing on a very thin line, which is kind of what I was hoping for. A lot about the early game micro, having your relatively small amount of units in the right place, targeting the right units. It is incredibly difficult to do at all times on either side for the Protoss, defensively placing your units, for the Terran, having offense, but then also making sure to macro back at home. Which Clem is, you know, of course, doing quite well, but he did delay a lot of that mid-game Terran to do what he did, and that was a failure. But he did also kill a decent amount of Trap's units, particularly those Phoenix. So another one goes down too. So it's certainly a different type of opener for this PvT. You know, 4 Vikings just running around. That's not something you usually see this early on. But nonetheless, I think Clem manages to find an advantage. He's got an army advantage. Sim combat shields +1 going to be finishing around the same time. 3rd CC floating over. Trap trying to take a 4th. Working off of 4 gases, actually. So a slight change up from his previous PvT. 4th Nexus is very new, so even a handful of Marines can be a threat, especially when Stim is done. And this is more of a threat just as the distraction. Main base is the target. Storm is on the way, interestingly enough, but I don't think it's going to happen. Vikings could land, and they aren't too shabby. Templar Archives is going to be targeted. Yep, I think that is worth it. Medevacs will be able to escape by the looks of things. There's not enough Phoenix. There's no Blink. And while most of the Vikings died, they did help. And then also this drop did not go back to the 4th base, went to the 3rd, actually. Does not manage to find any probes before Trap responds. Both of them just really playing some very high-speed TVP right now. It's kind of insane, but it looks like Clem might be dominating regardless. Clem with another army somehow getting across the map. Trap not with enough units at this point, I think. He's down 30 army supply. And while in a prime situation, with a shield battery, a guardian shield, Immortals focus firing, that probably can be covered. These are never any prime situations. Clem not with his whole army on the right side means that Trap does find a moment, but a very costly moment, as those Widowmines did pop off. Some units managed to escape, and he still is in a little bit of trouble, but keeping all 4 bases alive, adding back that Templar Archives. Colossus trying to get on the way here, finally. Had to take a very long time. Ghost Academy's already on the way for Clem as he starts up +1 armor, equal upgrades by the looks of things for a while yet. 4th CC coming down for Clem, too. I really thought that 4th base was a goner with that attack, but just having to take care of the army first made it so that wasn't snipeable. Trap, I am still a little concerned about his army quality. While the Immortals are nice, the Guardian Shield is there, and an Archon, a couple of Zealots do buffer. It just doesn't look quite enough. This is where you really need that area of effect to cover What is now a 20 armor supply difference. Finally, that Colossus is going to pop out. Extended Thermal Lance not anywhere close to finishing. However, probably Chronos going on unit production rather than upgrades. Now finally getting to those upgrade Chronos. Supply block as well. Whereas I believe Clem has never been supply blocked, but it has been so fast and so much has been going on. I haven't quite checked. Zealot's getting dropped in for some counter harassment, and both these guys are just giving as good as they can get because Trap was at the significant deficit. It looked like Clem was going to snowball him as he does so many other Protosses, yet Trap stands strong. It feels like the wall was very close to buckling. And then support beams were added. And now this is a relatively even game. I'm still biased towards Clem because I just witnessed him dominate the global championships, but Trap is playing fantastic PvT. Cross server as well, which is also cross server for Clem, but still I feel like Trap, you know, he's the older guy. He's the one who's coming back from military service, although by now it's been like months, but still. And he's playing the race that, a lot of people are kind of wondering how it is balance-wise, and one of those reasons is Clem. Clem can make them look silly. And he's actually matching him so far. That's insane. 5th base on the way for Trap as well now. He did stop at 4 gases, so it's not like he has a ton there, which means he has a lot of mineral income. A lot of Zealots could be warped in. This is quite a nice concave for Clem, though. 1-1 versus 1-1. Colossus not being taken down, but that is a wide arc for the Terran. Marauders starting to pack a punch. The Immortal about to go down, but not quite. Zealot reinforcements perhaps in the nick of time. Vikings finally getting on top of the Colossus, but not quite killing them. Go for the Warp Prism instead. They will grab the Warp Prism. The Marines, only thing left alive here. The Colossus will be perfect against them. They're going to be brought into the fold once again. But it looks like Trap, wary of further reinforcements of Vikings, particularly, right? He has barely anything to cover those very weak Colossus, is going to cut his losses and escape. And that's usually a cut his losses as in like, oh, okay, he be overextended. But actually, this is just him reading the situation very well. They did an almost equivalent amount of damage to each other's armies. So it was just a really good read on the situation. 2-2 finishing up much faster for Trap as he started to actually dump those Chronos into it, I imagine. So 2-2 quite a bit ahead. Clem at least working on 2-2-1. His 4th base is a planetary already. 5th is on the way. Scan on his opponent's 5th base because I don't believe he had checked that, but he is harassing the 4th base as he checks it, which can actually even sometimes, like a scan can be a reveal for the Terran intent, can also kind of be like a fake. Not that that was what happened there, but it can be sometimes. That was a check. That was just like, okay, he's on 5 bases, got it. And then harassing the 4th base. So far, not super worth it. Kills 5 probes, the loss of a medevac and 8 Marines. It's not the worst thing either, as both players have a very consistent income, both of them over 70 workers. Clem finally finishing up his 2-2, at least in the next 20 seconds, perhaps by the next attack. Now, he was attacked in the last battle, which means that I think he was a little late to actually getting his prime situation, so the EMPs didn't come down first, then the fight. The Vikings did not kill the Colossus, then the fight. This is something that Clem was hoping to change up, but Trap actually surprisingly ready for the engagement, kind of jumps on Clem, takes the opportunity all before that armor was done. Finally, it finishes, but now Clem is actually pushed back into a choke. 3 Colossus, still alive, although not very healthy, are trying to make this actually a good push, but they're also being distracted by a freaking supply depot because that's what Colossus do best. And the Marauder count is too high. The Ghost is still alive. The Medevac still with a lot of healing energy. And Trap does overextend. Plain and simple right there. It looked very promising when the Terran army got bulked up in a choke. That's where Colossus are going to do their best work, but the Colossus did not actually attack them during that entire time. But this army also overextending here from Clem as it gets weaker and weaker. Stims and damage coming in. Medevac's not getting the time to heal. Forced to take a breather, which I am very thankful for. Trap, he does still overall take more damage because of his overextension. But maybe he can hold on. Shield Body Overcharge is going to come in clutch if it can actually stay up and running. Looks so far so good. Clem forced to retreat. Drop coming in for the Warp Prism on Clem's side of the map, where Clem also had a drop that killed 12 probes. 5 bases, now 5 bases as Clem's 5th gets set up as a planetary to the top right. 3-3 starts up for Trap. A little late on the attack, but Clem never getting his armor. So I guess eventually Trap will have this advantage if he manages to survive that long. Once again, chasing after the Terran army. That might have been a mistake. The Colossus does go down. That's only Zealots and Stalkers up against a very powerful Bio army. Medivacs with plenty of healing. The Micro of Clem going to be perfect as well. And the Stalkers do not want to be on the front lines. They were desperately missing the Zealots on the front. And Trap Supply now officially in the gutter as the Warp Prism in the main did absolutely nothing. Trap trying to get his 6th base up and running, but this is 400 minerals that he actually needs on the front lines. Unfortunately, 400 minerals worth of Zealots. That's only 4 Zealots, and Zealots in this game are getting not useless exactly, but they aren't really that powerful. If they're in smaller numbers, if they're really the only thing that the Protoss has, Terran will just micro against that all damn day long. They are not particularly useful. So Trap, really what he needs is a lot more Colossus, a couple of Disruptors, maybe some sneaky Storms, which he never got back to after the snipe in the early game. 3-2 now done for both parties, and Clem's army supply just tells the tale. Finally, Trap, after 16 minutes of pure back-and-forth action, forced to tap out. Damn. He's also tasked with checking how many people do in fact have phones. It's taken him a long time. In the top right of Alcyone, it is Team Liquid's Clem, and he did win game number 1, but it was quite a challenge. In the bottom left, putting up that challenge, it is Gen G's Trap. Playing an incredible pace, both of them. So many Protosses would have fallen to Clem. They would have never gotten on Clem's side of the map either with a real push or even a Warp Prism, because they would have been under so much pressure. Trap managed to do a lot of tit for tat up until about the 13-minute mark, I would say, is when it became clear that he had just run out of steam. He had run out of units, so he could no longer go back and forth. He had to retreat, defend, kind of pray for a miracle, and that's when Clem's going to take full advantage, right? I think it was that push into the natural of Clem, which looked amazing for Trap. Despite the number of Marauders that were still alive, and they were like at 75% health, I guess, they were in a horrendous choke. And if all 3 Colossus would actually freaking focus on units instead of a supply depot, that would have been a lot of damage. Enough to kill Clem? I'm not sure. But enough to make maybe a reinforcing wave of Zealots, do a lot more damage, enough to recover your own army supply deficit, you know, after you realize you're not quite going to win. Like, there would have been a lot more time to actually recover. I think it would have been better. But not only did at least one Colossus get distracted by the supply depots, I want to say the second one just simply wasn't in range. It just, like, chilled. It was like, it does look like a good opportunity, but I'm not going to go for it. And I really do just blame the Colossus. One Colossus misfiring maybe isn't the biggest of deals. 3 of them really not getting prime attacks off is such a missed opportunity. 3 Colossus do actually injure Marauders. 1 doesn't, 2 is kind of 3 actually does kill Marauders. Eventually. Of course, a couple of Immortals in there also would have been beautiful, but he had lost them earlier on. The fact that Storm was never researched again was understandable, first of all. I'm not saying that he missed this opportunity that was given to him. The game was so close and so back and forth. But it does suck because his intent was to have that Storm relatively quickly. You know, he was on 4 bases, so that maybe doesn't sound very quick, but for that type of game, that type of process, yeah, it was actually kind of quick. Especially when you consider that he was only on 4 gases, which is, again, enough, but not a whole lot. So his intent was to go for Storm, maybe even almost like a surprise, because he looked like he was going to go into this Colossus mass charge, right? That typical style, get to 3 of them before anything else, blah, blah, blah. And his actual intent was to get to Storm first. It was only after that was sniped did we see a Colossus start up, which also added some awkwardness to the flow of the game. So, gotta really imagine what would happen if that storm was done. And Trap was then littering High Templars around the map and trying to take advantage of Clem over chasing, which, you know, he does in everything. And usually his chasing is entirely correct, so you don't call it over chasing. But, you know, every so often a fungal comes down on him as he tries to chase after the retreating Zerg, and you're like, that's what you get. And I feel like Storm would kind of be the equivalent. But he never got there. Little Reaper Hellion opener gets totally brushed aside. Nice kill on the Reaper. A little pylon block. Trap hiding whatever he is actually doing. Clem does see the 2 gateways at the front, the Robo at the natural, and can kind of piece together that it was, in fact, a Twilight Council. Big surprise. But it's still good information. Better than absolutely nothing. The concern would be that 4th gateway or no, which this Widowmine drop is actually going to be able to see. Good pro positioning, sees the medevac. Second pro positioning in case the first one missed it. Again, sees the medevac. Clem knows he's seen, but there's not really any reason not to do this. Blink is not yet done. Just seconds away. This is a typical timing, I suppose, for it. Could be faster. But then also would mean the Stalkers have to be in position, which they clearly were not. So Clem gets into the mineral line, delays some mining, doesn't actually get a lot of scouting. Theoretically, a Warp Prism could be warping in Stalkers on his side of the map right now, but I think he's not super worried about dying to it. He is taking into consideration, so this tank was rallied to the natural, and he goes, well, hold on a second. I don't want to worry about attacks into the main, because whether it's, you know, a 4 gate that's actually about to hit me, which it's not, or it's a 3 gate where he does decide to get a Warp Prism, which it is. Either way, he's going to try and start to, you know, go after the tech labs, go after the reactors, go after the reinforcements, or even just go after the SCVs. Trap is investing a little more into this pressure, keep in mind, by grabbing that Warp Prism. He is still capable of producing probes. That's not necessarily a problem. But if he's going to continue investing into Stalkers, he just wants them to actually do damage. Right now, they're going to cancel Stim about halfway done. That is kind of painful for Clem. No Stalkers died in the making of that either, so that's really good for Trap. By blinking in one at a time like that, that's a shift Q blink, actually, not like an all-together blink. He actually did mitigate the damage to his Stalkers. You know, it can go absolutely terribly if you do that type of blink into the main and the bio's also there, then you really regret life. But for that particular purpose, that type of blink micro is really on point. And that's something I think I've talked about in the past, because so often it is just all the Stalkers at once jumping in, right? Kind of a neat little thing there. We did have auto turret harassment. Looks like the Raven is still around somewhere alongside the Widowmine drop, getting kind of equal damage so far. They both are just nibbling at the workers, while truly focusing more so on the infrastructure. Widowmine does not die that quickly to sentries, apparently. Yeah, woohoo! Nope, nope, nope. Yeah, well, don't, you can't give him 2 targets. You can't do that. Trap does lose just X amount of extra mining time because of Clem's micro, which, you know, sometimes isn't advisable. I do not advise it for all you plebs out there to do that type of micro, because you will mess up in your macro. But he actually was not doing anything else at that time. The Raven was still waiting for more energy. The tank was covering any amount of Stalker pressure, and he was just waiting for the 3rd CC to float over. Robotics Bay is on the way, so no attempt to go into that faster storm, which I really think would have been a bit of a surprise, too. If that drop had never happened, not only does the storm get to complete, but he also might not realize it was going to be storm. Just sort of defaulted into the Colossus expectation. And that also would have been good for Trap, but yeah, the drop did happen, so. But this is just going to go right into Colossus, and without that little hiccup in your plans, I gotta imagine Trap's going to have a better early to mid-game. He managed to recover from the Templar snipe, which was very, very impressive, but now he doesn't have to worry about that as much. 30 supply advantage for Clem, but that is kind of the way it goes. This is where you absolutely need to be in the right position. So Colossus against a shield battery with Zealots protecting it, and that does cover a supply difference. Combat chills wasn't quite done, and, you know, Stim had been delayed, so that also was something that Trap could at least think about, like, okay, I have an extra 10, 20 seconds before I really have to worry. It's done. Combat chill is going to finish. +1 is done. Now you need to worry. But Trap does have some stack defense. Some. Okay, main base isn't going to go down, but That auto turret has a mission, apparently. And he does have his Colossus out. Colossus singular. And it's why, buddy, no. Oh, Jesus. I would be so scared to do that. That is without extended thermal lens. You do want to stop them from being just, able to rush into your third base and siege up their tank, but that was, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, the mineral's not really taken out. You can get through it, but you don't want to go through it with a choke. There we go. Looking a little bit better. Shield Body Overcharge is going to help out as well. Widowmine does splash on the Zealots, but a little bit on the Marauders, too. Immortal is really going to be helpful here. And that is going to survive, despite losing its shields. Zealots gave their life for the greater good, replaced by further Zealots. Stalkers need to actually make some room. Overcharge is no longer available, probably why Clem is sticking around here, knowing that he can get more value out of this push. But it does look like this will finally be pushed back. Medivacs, once again, plenty of healing to be done, but no time to do so. As the Marauders, and the Medivacs as well, obviously being stutter-stepped. Stalkers are very, very low for Trap, which is why an aggressive blink forward was something I was not going to advise. He did it, and did not get punished for it, but good lord. And will actually be able to breathe. So 5th base will be coming down apparently really quick too, because it's just the way that Trap is playing. Obviously on the gold. Clem's 4th base is almost done. 1-1 done for Clem too, I think during that attack. 1-1 not quite so finished for Trap, but second forge at least is on the way. Very similar pacing to the last game. But without the Templar gaff, and apparently with some disruptors. Which I think, I don't think Trap was opposed to getting last game, but was probably a very difficult call to make when there was so many pacing changes. Like if nothing is happening, if it's just completely nothing and you're waiting and building your perfect army, you probably go into disruptors. But because so much was happening in the last game, it was like, well, if I go for disruptors, they're gonna kind of slow my army down, and by the time they reinforce, I'll just go ahead and have too few units, so I want to focus on rebuilding my army count, that type of thing. But I do think disruptors are, again, kind of necessary, alongside my idea that dark shrines are also very good to dealing with Terran. It is unfortunate, because disruptors are hit or miss. I know their downsides, blah, 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 but I do think they're a part of it. They're a part of this game. Part of the literal game that you play. War Prism's heading off to the left side as Trap knows where the army is. He actually is going to engage. A little dangerous. You never quite know how this Xel'Naga is going to work out. Sometimes it feels like you're going to do better because the Zealots run into a choke, but then your army's in a choke and get blasted by Colossus. I'm always scared to take engagements around the Xel'Naga. More disruptors are on the way. Trap would really love to have a better map control position at this point, though. The fact that Clem is on 4 bases, set up solid with a 5th on the way, upgrade started, he's focusing just purely on the attack at this point, which is not a good feeling. Even though he does well with distractions, you still want to have a distraction. And that Warp Prism was just found out, so goodbye to that distraction too. And this is also how disruptors can be a bit better. If you are engaging into the Terran on their side of the map, they're defending their chokes, then somehow, disruptors, they can either be used to actually get those engagements going, or they can be used as a safe retreat. When you're on your defensive, whenever those disruptors throw out a shot, don't make it, and retreat, retreating disruptor protection doesn't go as far. Because you're like, oh, well, I have to retreat. Let's go back up to the 3rd base. Oh, he shot down my 5th because I had to wait for my disruptors to reload. That's not what you want. So disruptors basically kind of, I don't know if they're better in the offense, but their usage is different depending on whether or not you're on the offense or the defense. In this case, Clem, obviously knows that disruptors are out. Is going to be looking for the widest possible arc so he can just avoid having to even be crowd controlled. If you're moving your entire Blavan army away from a disruptor shot, that's also the time that they're not dealing damage. Tutu's going to finish up for the Terran here. Liberator range is on the way alongside extra command centers and extra starports. Trap almost double expanding? Almost. He is up to 6 bases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases. There we go. As Clem also gets his 5th up. Trap is just going for a very heavy mineral style, so expanding is what he does best. Eventually, he's going to need a higher gas style, though, because with the Stargate coming down and Dark Templar as well, he's going to be looking for a higher quality army. The low gas, high mineral style is great when you feel like those zealot overwhelming moments can happen. Or when you think you have control, so you can start sending even up to 20 zealots across the map for a huge distraction. You know, we see max packs do that. But in a game like this, they'd probably just run to the death every single time, right? So, you know, Trap has been entirely on the defensive. This isn't the ideal situation for Protoss, who really would have hoped to have a good defensive moment that then turned into them on the offense. So then they could control the base count of the Terran. They could they could find the Liberator transition in progress. They could start sniping the Liberators as they come across the map, as opposed to, boom, suddenly Liberators are on the front. If you are ever in this position, Trap is doing what he needs to do, which is at least think about Stargates as an option. Because if Clem is doing the Terran thing and is looking for the final composition to be Liberators, he is going to be in your face. And Stalkers do not want to be engaging under like 8 Liberators with range with +2. Oh, that was a decent disruptor shot, surprisingly. Storm also coming down to affect some of the Vikings as well. We only are on 1 Colossus, though, so that's not the biggest of deals. Trap with still a ton of army left over. It's just not all here. He has, you know, like 15 Zealots waiting on the left side. Storms are littered around the place, always coming in as the Ghosts oftentimes will just shoot all their EMPs and be like, oh, great, I got rid of all the High Templars. Good for me. And then there'll be more High Templars, right? So that's almost always a Terran thing. It looks like Clem being a little bit better about having an EMP in the pocket. Unfortunately, these surprise High Templars aren't working. The Disruptors also are not working. And Trap, while he did seem to be thinking about getting to air, was certainly never allowed to get there. And this is the exact position you do not want to be in. That is so many Liberators sieged up with only +1, but still. And Zealots don't shoot up. I don't know if you guys know that, but they come in for a surround, and they're like, well, should we? I don't know if they should, but they are stopping any ground reinforcements from supporting those Liberators. So, actually, Trap manages to hold on. Just so many units in so many different places. Clem unable to reinforce. Eventually, those Liberators do get taken down, and Clem is the one that is out on the ropes. I was kind of with him. You know, I would have been like, game over, get out of this freaking game, Protoss, when I saw 8 Liberators sieged up in front of their bases, but that would have been wrong. Trap, 100% reading the situation correctly, now going for the counterattack before Clem can remax. Clem has so much economy, so much production, but he needs time to actually get there. Liberator's not going to be able to siege up for the Stalkers, take them out. Actually, 2 of them do, and because they blinked forward, they just got wrecked by Bio with 3-3, and that actually turns around so quickly. It looks like I don't even know how this game works. This went from Trap looking like he was going to die to suddenly being a tremendous advantage supply-wise, to trying to end the game, go for the throat, to throwing away 40 supplies. So, okay then. I think Trap was correct doing what he did. I think he knew that he was still going to be in trouble, even if he had pushed that first attack back. He knew that if he didn't take an advantage from that pushback, that he was still going to be in trouble. So that's why he dived the way that he did, but unfortunately, Clem did have a lot of economy and did have a lot of production, and just needed a second to recover it. And here we go. Second Liberator siege up on the gold. And Trap, definitely not at a similar supply this time. This is now obvious that Clem is going to win. And Trap has all these bases. Oh, this one wasn't really mining, to be fair, but still. He has all these bases, but still is in a terrible position. 3-3 also was not done at that time, but I think just the lack of Zealots to buffer for those Stalkers that blinked forward. Seemed like there were some other units dying over here because the Colossus went down at some point. I don't know. Somehow, Trap actually manages to circumvent the Liberator surrounds, but only temporarily. And the Bio army was still superior, so Clem is going to 2-0 Trap and move over to those finals. I mean, Trap was neck and neck with him in that first game. The second game, I do feel like he didn't have as much to do, I guess. He was expanding great, he was researching great, blah, 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 but he was also just stuck at home the entire time. not a great feeling. And you know, you're hoping for that. If you're going to play defensive for an entire 15-minute game, you're hoping that they overextend, you get the advantage, and then you have map control from then on, which is what Trap looked like he was doing. And then just boom, suddenly his supply was all gone.